New splits in the Democratic Party over free trade, while presidential candidate Hillary Clinton on this issue sounds very different than Secretary of State Clinton. This is Special Report. Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. Most Democrats will tell you, even this early, they're pretty certain Hillary Clinton will be their party's nominee in the end. But on the issue of free trade, the likely nominee is hedging. A bipartisan trade agreement would give President Obama enhanced power. The pushback is so strong, Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry reports the White House and Clinton are feeling the liberal heat.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders today blocked a bipartisan effort to give President Obama fast-track trade authority, pouring gasoline on an emerging trade war among Democrats, which may end up burning Hillary Clinton.
Maybe I'm dumb and you can fool me 3 times, but there does come a limit to how many times you think you can fool the American people.
The real goal of Sanders, a Democratic socialist weighing a presidential bid from the left, is to slow down fast track and join forces with liberals like Elizabeth Warren to defeat the president's Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, leaving Clinton between a rock and a hard place on the deal, known as TPP, which she once supported but waffled on in New Hampshire Tuesday.
Any trade deal has to produce jobs and raise wages and increase prosperity and protect our security. And we have to do our part in making sure we have the capabilities and the skills to be competitive.
In order to appease the left, Clinton has already flip-flopped this month on same-sex marriage and driver's licenses for undocumented workers, teeing up the next possible policy shift as TPP, which she strongly backed as Secretary of State.
Moving quite well in the right direction.
Another possible presidential hopeful, Martin O'Malley, is also hitting her from the left.
We need to stop entering into bad trade deals.
If she ends up opposing the deal, Clinton will again be at odds with the president. One of their ugliest battles in the 2008 campaign came over a flyer Mr. Obama used against her by highlighting his opposition to free trade.
So shame on you, Barack Obama.
Now the president is supporting free trade and bumping up against Warren as well.
I love Elizabeth. We're allies on a whole host of issues, but she's wrong on this.
Warren fired back at the president today with a new populist pitch, declaring, quote, they are making a lot of promises about how the deal will affect workers, the environment, and human rights. Promises, but people like you can't see the actual deal.
Now, after the delay by Bernie Sanders, the Senate Finance Committee did come back late today to get going on this legislation, though this will be an uphill battle for the president. Senator Harry Reid saying, quote, not only no, but hell no on fast track, Brett.
Another issue, Ed, on this new book, Clinton Cash. It sounds like the Clinton campaign is sending out the attack dogs, or getting ready to, on this book.
They certainly are giving that indication. A new 3-page memo we got our hands on. The Clinton camp throws a kitchen sink at the author, Peter Schweitzer. Call him a Bush operative, tie him to the Koch brothers, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. Basically, a page from the Clinton playbook. You hit the attacker. Basically, another vast right-wing conspiracy. And the author does have ties to Republicans, but what the memo does not mention is that there's independent reporting from the New York Times, Washington Post, and Fox News about this. So the memo's shooting the messenger, but still not directly refuting the message, Brett, which is questions about contributions to the Clinton Foundation, and that's a question they're going to have to address.
And speeches as well. Ed, thank you. Don't forget, a special Friday night, 10 p.m., Fox News reporting the tangled Clinton web. You don't want to miss this. It'll be running through the weekend. Set the DVR. A long fight between a farmer and the federal government over raisins made it to the U.S. Supreme Court today. Correspondent Shannon Bream has a Regulation Nation report on who really owns a farmer's crop.
If you want my raisins, pay me for them, and I'll give them to you.
For decades, the federal government has been forcing Marvin Horn and thousands of others to fork over large chunks of their crops without paying them a single penny. The regulatory practice stems from the 1949 creation of a governmental body called the Raisin Administrative Committee. Under the framework, California raisin handlers, those who pack raisins for wholesale, are ordered to give the government a fluctuating percentage of their crop each year, the stated goal being to stabilize raisin prices on the open market. The government reserve of raisins is eventually sold, often to outlets like school lunch programs. The proceeds are then used to fund the committee, and any net profits are redistributed back to the handlers. Often, there are none. Horn decided not to comply, and the Department of Agriculture came after him. He says he now owes millions in penalties and administrative costs. Today, most of the justices seemed skeptical of the government's argument that simply by putting raisins into the stream of commerce, handlers must submit to all government regulation, including sometimes handing over up to 40% of their crop. Justice Samuel Alito asked if the government could see any limit to that position. Quote, could the government say to a manufacturer of cell phones, you can sell cell phones, however, every fifth one you have to give to us? The Fifth Amendment bans the taking of private property for public use without just compensation. Justice Stephen Breyer asked whether the government's regulatory scheme, which manipulates raisin prices on the open market, winds up being the compensation in this case. Quote, the fact that all the raisin producers are better off because of this program, including you, that's what's the compensation. Horn warned that while his case may be about raisins, the court's decision could have a much broader impact.
Because if the government can come into your house and say, well, you don't need this and you don't need that, and we need this for society, and you're going to have to give it up, and they don't pay you for it. That's what every citizen should be worried about.
The government says Horn has a choice. Plant a different crop. But today during the arguments, Chief Justice John Roberts said the government's suggestion, if you don't like the regulations, then do something else, well, he called it, quote, a pretty audacious statement. Brett?
Shannon Bream outside the U.S. Supreme Court tonight. Shannon, thank you. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with the raisin farmer or the government? Let me know at Facebook.com/BrettBaerSR or on Twitter @BrettBaer. You can use the hashtag Special Report. A new Fox poll shows Americans do not think the fight against Islamic extremists, ISIS, is going well, with 63% saying somewhat or very badly. Only 3% say it's going very well. This as word comes from France of a terror plot foiled when the suspect accidentally shot himself. Police say he was plotting an attack against French Catholics. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott reports the plan appears to represent an expansion of the ISIS war on Christians.
Now apparently in the sights of terrorists, churches and churchgoers in the West. This Catholic church in the Paris suburb of Villejuif, allegedly a target of a 24-year-old Algerian man living in France and now under arrest. Police responded to an ambulance call from Sid Ahmed Gam after he shot himself near his home in southeast Paris Sunday. They say they found an arsenal of weapons, ammunition, bulletproof vests, as well as documents linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Documents were also found that prove without any ambiguity that the individual was preparing an imminent attack, in all probability, against one or two churches.
ISIS is targeting Christians in the Mideast. This week, video was released purporting to show Ethiopian Christians being killed in Libya. Authorities say the suspected terrorist, now under guard at a Paris hospital, was contacted by a person in Syria and told to attack churches. They also say he was suspected of wanting to join hundreds of foreign fighters in Syria, but they didn't have enough information to hold him. And police have linked him to the murder of a 32-year-old French woman found dead in her car Sunday morning, also in the Villejuif Paris suburb. All this comes after January's terror attacks in Paris at the Charlie Hebdo newspaper office and a kosher supermarket, which left 17 dead and France on high alert.
The first consequence is we are always under a terrorist threat. When I say we, not just France, but a number of countries, and we should continue to remain vigilant.
In fact, after the January terror attacks, synagogues and mosques in France were put under special protection, but not churches. Officials today say that will have to change. Brett.
Greg, thank you. Up next, the IRS commissioner on the hot seat again on Capitol Hill, and lawmakers did not pull their punches. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. WRAZ in Raleigh, North Carolina, with an escaped prisoner turning himself in 40 years after breaking out of a county jail. Clarence Moore was serving an 11-year sentence for larceny before bolting in 1972. He turned himself in because he was unable to get adequate medical treatment without legal identification. Fox 21 in Colorado Springs with a man so frustrated with his computer, he shot it 8 times in an alley. Police cited Lucas Hinch for discharging a weapon within city limits. Hinch accepted the charge with good humor, saying he didn't know it was illegal. And this is a live look at the streets of Baltimore. WBFF is covering demonstrators on the streets again, protesting the death of Freddie Gray. Rallies are expected for the rest of the week in Baltimore. Gray's death, as we told you, from a spinal injury while in police custody, is under investigation. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. From Special Report, we'll be right back.